So what should I do? Sorry.
You're good to go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to GLF Live. I'm Gabrielle Lipton, the editor of Landscape News for the Global Landscapes Forum, and today we're discussing an imperative, yet a quite opaque and divisive topic, which is carbon markets. And I say they're divisive because while some people believe they hold huge potential for helping economies and reducing emissions on a vast scale, they also bear a lot of risks, from harm to local communities to countries exploiting loopholes in their regulations. I think this GLF Live comes at a very important time. It's right before the UN Climate Conference, COP26 in Glasgow, where carbon markets will be the focus of the negotiations between member states, as they're the last piece of the Paris Agreement that hasn't yet been fully hammered out. So I'm the first to admit that I'm no expert on this topic. I'm here today to learn as well. And we're so lucky to have with us Paul Burgers, who comes from a very impressive background in agroforestry research for 30 years. And then he switched to run a Dutch social enterprise that helps local communities in Indonesia become certified for carbon credits. So he really knows the carbon market as it impacts individual people and communities on the ground. So Paul, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to GLF Live.
Thank you. With your introduction, the pressure is on me, I guess.
No pressure at all, just an easy conversation about a very complex topic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But let's start off with the news, which is how are carbon markets relevant to this year's upcoming COP and the negotiations that will happen there?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To me, I think carbon markets are very crucial because what we see is that if we want to move towards climate neutrality in the EU, for instance, by 2050, we have to invest in all kinds of options. And what research has shown is that up until 2030, carbon markets and natural climate solutions, so investing in forestry and in tree planting can contribute up to 37% of the emission reduction we want to achieve. So I think carbon markets are very important for especially reforestation and forest protection measures to achieve or to come at least close to our plan in the EU to become carbon neutral by 2050, and even more so because in addition to the reduction, we need to take about 10 to 15 gigatons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by 2050, and I think that can only be done by trees and forest reforestation. So carbon markets can really play a big role in achieving these challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that I think it's part of the answer.
Mm-hmm. So they really, through reforestation, through tree planting, as you've mentioned, there are big opportunities for carbon markets to help boost nature-based solutions.
Yes.
So what role can this play in the Paris Agreement in a best case scenario? Why are there such high hopes for how this can really help achieve emissions reductions through nature? If you could just expand on that a bit more.
Sorry, what do you mean?
In terms of achieving the Paris Agreement, and in your first explanation, you were focusing a lot on carbon markets as they relate to nature-based solutions. So how does this really help? How could this really help boost commitments to the Paris Agreement, boost the hopes of achieving the Paris Agreement?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just as I said, for the short term, really, in the next 10 years, nature-based solutions can be up to almost 40% of the solution to achieve the reductions in the EU. And it can either be by offsetting or by investing in the EU in tree planting schemes. because we really have to reduce the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that is not going to work with renewable energy, because renewable energy only avoids bringing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So we stabilize it, it's important, but we have to take out a lot of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and I think that can only be achieved, and its best way is to do it through tree planting and reforestation efforts. So I think it's a crucial component, and if the carbon market can finance these three projects, then I think they can play a very big role.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for expanding on that. Getting into the details a little bit more, there are many ways to price carbon through carbon taxes, through emissions trading systems, through carbon credits. These are just a few of the mechanisms that exist in the carbon market. Which of these pricing mechanisms do you think could be most effective in reducing emissions?
Yes. I think for me, I always talk, of course, from my own experience. I think carbon pricing is a very good mechanism. I mean, the emission trading system, not because of the EU, that's only EU based, some of the ETS systems. So it's been a bit of a controversy already under the clean development mechanism, which is said to be a complete failure because it's only working on mostly on renewable energy. It hasn't really involved any reforestation or nature-based solutions. So that's a big disadvantage. So I think carbon pricing can really be something to force companies to do something about their carbon emissions. And I think, if I look at my clients, the last thing they want to do is spend their money on taxes. So I think it gives a good motivation for them they rather invest the money in a tree project or solar energy or whatever they want to do instead of paying taxes to the government. I know that would be their last option. So I think if you put pricing on carbon, I think it could stimulate companies to do something about this. So I think carbon pricing is one of the most effective, and you see France already moving ahead with it. In Germany, I think is also coming. The Dutch always late. We are always late in the EU when it comes to climate change. England is already quite well advanced, and Indonesia now also willing to do this. So I think it is moving, and many countries see it can help push forward achieving the emission reductions we really need to achieve.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes hand in hand with so many calls that are being made to bring the private sector more into emissions reductions efforts. And if carbon pricing is one way to do so very effectively, that can have big results.
The only thing is that will come later in your other questions. But it shouldn't only be a negative stimulus for companies that there's something that we have to do another payment here, payment there. So carbon pricing should come with other options, but let's talk about that later.
Yes, we will get to risks and solutions later in this conversation. And to all of our listeners, if anything is triggering some questions for you, please drop them in the chat box from whatever platform you're listening on, so we can take your questions at the end. But moving along for now, there are concerns that countries could potentially exploit some of the loopholes in the carbon market regulations to achieve their NDCs without actually reducing their emissions. Could you explain some of the risks in formalizing policy around carbon markets, and as you kind of touched upon, what are some safeguards that can be put in place to make sure that countries are reducing their emissions if the carbon market is formalized?
Yeah, it's a big question. Yeah, I'm not sure if the audience knows about NDCs. So these are the national determined commitments, right, that every country has. So every country has their emission reduction strategy. It's summarized in these NDCs. The problem, I think, what I read is that countries, most of them are not up to their target at the moment, so they are behind what they should do. So a lot of countries, there's no discussion yet about what credits, carbon credits, should be can be included. So there's a lot of debate on countries trying to get the old carbon credits from the Kyoto Protocol involved in their emission reductions, but I think the Paris Agreement stated it can only be from 2020 onwards, but not all countries agree to that. So that's a big issue that still needs to be sorted out. And that's another one. Yeah, the issue of additionality is a very important one. So any carbon market or carbon credit that is generated should be additional, meaning that without a carbon payment, this carbon credit would not happen. So that has been a problem with a clean development mechanism where all these renewable energy projects were set up. But it has been a bit controversial whether or not these projects would have developed with or without carbon markets. So there's a lot of debate that these projects would have been done anyway. So in that case, they cannot be part of carbon accounting for a national country. So that's also why I think forest projects can be, with satellite images and land use images, can be really clear about additionality. You can go back, as we do in Indonesia, up to, I think, 15 years back. We have images where we can show that the land is still degraded already for 15 years. So you can make a point, this is really an additional project. So that is something where countries play around with. I know Brazil is really against this, because in the Paris Agreement it says that if you have, like in our case, we invest in Indonesia in a project, it's paid by a Dutch company, so the carbon credits from that project go to the Dutch company. And Brazil is saying, and Indonesia, I think, is also moving in that direction, that no, this additionality means that all these projects like ours in the voluntary carbon market, they are additional to what we already do. So that means that if that is the case, they don't have to reduce their emission target. Is that clear? That's a complex issue. Mm-hmm. So either they include our emissions in Indonesia into the NDC commitment, but that cannot be done because it's already claimed by a Dutch company. Mm-hmm. So there's a danger of double counting as well. Who is getting the carbon credits? That's now, and Brazil, I think, and Indonesia, there is something to say for that, because these are relatively small scale projects, and it's very additional because it's doing a lot on biodiversity, on community involvement, and so they are just a bit outside from our NDC. So we don't have to reduce our emission target because this project is in our country. So that's another, that's a big issue, I think, and it will also could affect our work as well if Indonesia in the end has to bring in our carbon credits into the NDC, then we will be out of business because then we cannot reserve those credits for companies in Holland or Germany or Britain, Scandinavia, where we have clients. So that's something, tricky one, I think.
So you mentioned a lot of terminology in there. We had double counting, we had additionality, we had a bit about countries backtracking and trying to count now emissions they've already reduced in the past. So for people listening, these are complex terms and complex topics. There's a lot of literature out there on them. If you're wanting to learn more, you can quickly Google and you'll have plenty to read in no time. But I do want to switch a bit. We've been talking about or talking kind of around your experience in Indonesia, and I'm excited to dig into that a bit more. So let's go in that direction now. Tell us a bit about the work of your social enterprise, and especially your work with rural and local communities, and just seeing how carbon trading has the potential to really give them a big economic boost. What really needs to be done to help local communities potentially profit from carbon markets, and just how your experience has helped you learn about that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's another, can talk for 1 hour. Now, what the problem often is with these big, large-scale projects for carbon sequestration is that they treat agricultural land and forestry land as just a simple carbon sink. So the end target is carbon sequestration, and that undermines holistic agricultural practices, which are usually done by local communities. So that also means usually, like when we worked in Laos, there was a company coming into a village and they said, "You want to be happy? People, you want to be happy? Yes, okay, we give you trees." And then they just came in and they planted trees all over the place and on all the land, and people were not involved and they were not happy with the trees. And then in the end, because it was only geared at carbon sequestration, and if you work with local communities, you have to start from the local community. So what we have is a very intensive FPIC process, so a free, prior and informed consent process. I think the NGOs who are listening know about it. So that can take up to 3-4 months of discussing with the local community how they want to have it, how it can work for them. And we arrange the project around their priorities and preferences. And if you start from there, then the community project, and then you will have a very, it's our experience, very effective and successful reforestation program, because people are really, feel the economic benefits. It's really what they want, and it's how they can solve their own problems by joining this project, and they can have their say in whatever they want to achieve. And the tree species are selected by themselves, and not coming in with this is the best tree for carbon sequestration, and you have to plant those. But then if a farmer doesn't have any use for that tree, he's not interested. So if you want to have really economic advantage for the community, you have to listen. Yeah, it's quite obvious for many of us, but in practice, this is not happening. So they not really listen, and they don't put the community in the driver's seat as we do. So they do it, and we facilitate what they are doing and help them and give them directions, and whatever we can support, we do it. And then it feels like they are having their own project, and that works quite well. And the benefits also, in our case, and it's agroforestry, of course, mixture of indigenous trees and fruit trees, spices, so they can have the income from the trees. We pay them every year. If the work has been done according to the schedule, everything is done. They get a carbon payment each year, so for the first 5 years, which is like a bridging fund for them to set up the agroforestry system. And then after 5 years, and this was their own decision, they say, "Paul, after 5 years, we don't need your money anymore, because then we can live from the trees. So we are safe. But if you can help us in the first 5 years, to overcome costs and maybe hire some labor, get some manure and to help the tree grow, and that is already enough for us. And then they can really benefit, but you have to do direct investment. So it's really directly between corporate and the community. So nothing in between, like in the the Paris Agreement and now the upcoming meeting, the COP, they are talking about the carbon market that should be developed, run by the UN agencies. Yeah, and then I know the UN a bit, so I'm afraid that most of our carbon money, which is supposed to be for the community, is stuck somewhere in bureaucracy, and that's, I think, if you really want to have economic benefit, it should be directly to the community, not again through a bureaucratic organization where you have to pay all kinds of fees, and in the end you only have 40% left of what you are getting from your company, from the client.
Mm-hmm. So cutting out the middlemen and really having community buy-in into the project so that it's sustainable for them. That's what's really going to help them economically in the long term. Thanks for sharing a bit about your experience there. We have a lot of questions coming in from the audience, which is great, and we're going to get to those at the end, and please keep submitting them as we go along. Looking forward to getting to those. But I want to go back again to your experiences with local communities. What are some of the biggest risks that carbon trading poses? You touched on them a bit, losing out money to middlemen and things like that. But how can some of these be safeguarded against?
Carbon trading, what we do, we make them the owner of the carbon credits. So they are, in theory, free to sell the carbon to whoever they want. So that could be the risk for us if they say, well, we'll sell it to somebody else. So we invest a lot of money. And they say, well, you're not getting, because we get a better price somewhere else. I know in practice they don't get a better price. So but could be something that could be a threat for carbon trading, because then the whole process of investing and then getting your investment back is gone. The carbon trading, as I said, in last, the case where you don't involve the community in an active way from the beginning, you have a big risk that your carbon project is not going to work. There was a big example some years ago in Holland in Africa, where they were saying to the farmers also, well, we're going to reforest this area, and you can get carbon payments from that. That's good for you. And then they said, but then they never involved the community, and the community said, well, that's a land where we want to plant maize. It's our food crop. And then, they didn't allow them to plant maize. And after 2-3 years, they just cut down the entire forest and started planting maize. So that is, I think, the biggest risk in carbon trading is not involving and not listening to the preferences of local communities, and work with them and through them. And if you come in with your predefined idea, then you have no flexibility in adjusting it to the local situation, that is a big risk, I would say. And then the local community doesn't get any benefit, maybe some payments, but like in Indonesia, wherever they buy a TV, they buy a motorcycle, and they still have to get some food the next day. So you have to work on those holistic issues, combining food, income, short-term, long-term. What is the best balance? And you can only achieve that if you work directly with and for the community. That's an answer.
Thank you. A bit of a personal question. You came from a career for decades in agroforestry research, ultimately switched into this space of running a social enterprise. Could you tell us about that switch and why you made that switch?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been working in Africa for World Agroforestry Center, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia. Then I switched to Asia. So we had projects mostly in Laos, Vietnam, Indonesia. And it was all mostly geared at research, which was fine as coming from a university. But then after years and years doing research and working with farmers, especially in Sumatra, who are very open, they always ask me, said, yeah, Paul, you do all this research and we help you with your PhD later on. But how is your research going to help us? Are you one of those white people, boule as they say, are you one of those white people who do the research and we help you and you disappear and we don't see you again? You don't come back to help us. So and that was really something that kept in my mind all the time when I was writing up my PhD. And I think I really have to do something back, because this is that was a very good comment from them, that even after my PhD, my manuscript ended up in a cupboard, presenting in hotels, papers, and saying about this should be done, that should be done, but in the end, nothing happens in the field. So that was my big drive to get out of the scientific world and start a business and start helping people on the ground. So that's how I went back to my former research location and started doing what I had found out from my PhD study, how I think you could develop agroforestry systems on degraded lands. I thought, well, should stop talking about it in conferences and air-conditioned hotels and go back to the rural area where I am at my best as well. So that's how I started. And then I thought, let's see where we end. But yeah, it doesn't end. It's moving and growing. Yeah.
And now you're deep in the process of getting those communities prepared to have carbon credits and join the market.
Yeah, we already got, we already set everything up as a carbon credit project. So companies are already paying me as part of their carbon reduction, but it was not certified. But they said, yeah, you work. That time I was still part-time in the university, so they say, yeah, you are a university staff, so you're not here to make money, and we trust you. And we had a university in Sumatra working with us, so the calculations should be fine. So just go ahead and do it. And if it's not working, at least we spend our money in investing in a reforestation program. So that's how we worked in the past 5, 6, 7 years. So we were getting quite some clients having that kind of CSR vision. So just go ahead, we just say what we do, and let's see where you end up. And now they're quite happy that we got so many clients. I thought, well, now it's time to get the official certification done, which is it's harder than a PhD writing, but we managed. So we are now, the validation is done. That's the final step. So I hope by the end of this year we will have official carbon credits. So nothing goes wrong. It's now mainly administrative things, but yeah, running a business, you always think it goes too slow. It seems to take 2-3 months for the registration, and I think, why 2 months? Yeah, but yeah, we're almost there. So
well, that will be the final stretch.
And then everybody is officially certified on the Plan Vivo scheme.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to switch now to audience questions as time allows. We have a question from Juliet Tumio. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. For community projects in Africa that are new to the market, how can they go about finding clients so they can benefit from the projects? Is there a network they can join to connect with clients?
Yeah, that's if you are based in Africa, that may be a problem. Yeah, I'm lucky that I'm based in the Netherlands, so I am the spy for the farmers in Sumatra. So I'm working for them to find the clients here, and yeah, once took some time to get clients. I was a bit lucky in the beginning. You have to have luck, but if you really have to go into face-to-face contacts with clients. Maybe if you are in Africa, you can start looking for clients in your own country, and then see if you can find companies in your country who are willing to join. Takes a lot of effort, and in the beginning it's hard work, but in the end you will probably get some, and if you have one or two, then in our case it started moving by itself, and you get to know people, get to know you. And for now we have a luxury position where clients or potential clients are calling me, so I don't have to drag around with my projects and try to sell my project, so that's good. But if you are certified, if you can achieve also certification, then you can put your certificates in an online market system. So then you can just put it there, and clients from all over the world, they know. Like in Plan Vivo, they have a market. It's called Market. So a lot of companies all over the world, they look at that marketplace to buy carbon credits. So, but you have to be certified before you can take advantage of that. But that is an option if you have no opportunity to really sell your project to companies yourself.
Okay.
So you have to go through the hassle of certification.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'm sure that's a process. Thank you for giving some advice on that question. We have another question from Patty Christensen. So companies want to find viable, scaled projects that de-risk carbon. And she's asking, how do you bridge the gap between what companies want, which is usually a bit larger scale and it's already de-risked, with smallholder initiatives that are small and might have some inherent risks to them?
No, that's you have to find your own niche in the market. We are working in a voluntary market, so that's already not the big guys. So we are not working with the petrochemical industry. Well, I don't want them as a client because I don't want polluting enterprises to join our work. So we are already looking at small and medium scale enterprises, family run businesses who are not asking for a lot of carbon credits. We are getting a bit more into the medium scale now because we have built an efficient scheme to do more in 1 year. But you have to decide as a company, of course, what will be your market strategy. And in our case, I don't want to go into a process where I cannot involve the community as I do at the moment. So if you are larger scale, you have to keep aside some of the things, and I don't want to loosen out on the community involvement. So that means I cannot get 500 hectares in 1 year to be replanted. So that already means, okay, then for my company, that is not my market. So we are looking at small, medium scale enterprises in Europe, which is up to 200, 250 employees. But even the bakery on the corner of the street with 4 employees, they can join our project. And if you have 100 bakeries, you still have a decent amount of hectares that you can plant. So So you have to, as a company, if you want to go for the large scale, it's possible. But yeah, then you have to think about your vision and your mission. What do you want with your project? Do you want to have large scale? That's fine, that's a choice. But that has not been our choice. So we can now achieve about 200, 300 hectares per year. And that's a bit the maximum we can do. But yeah, sometimes a company, we have now a bigger one, and he said, no, that's fine. You do this year 150 and you do the other one next year 150. So not, so that's, that's how we have our niche, and that's how I feel happy, and the farmers are happy, and everybody in our business is happy. Yeah.
The ultimate success.
Yeah, so that's important for if you want to do it. What is your strategy, your mission, your vision, and how do you want to achieve that? And based on that, you have to say no to the big ones, and in our case, and we say no. You want to have the smaller ones who are also more involved in our project. Yeah, you don't get rich, but if that's not your target in life, then this is much nicer. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a question from Vikum from his home landscape in Sri Lanka. He's saying, we have a problem of mangrove clearing for fishery industry, and the community is not incentivized to protect one of their best carbon sinks. Is it possible to give carbon credits for the protection of mangroves as opposed to replanting once the damage is already done?
Yeah. Yes, that's another program. It's called the REDD+, the RED Plus mechanism. It's now also on the debate in the upcoming COP, because they're thinking, should we include forest protection or not? What you can, this is another complicated one. Well, you can get carbon credits for it. If your business as usual scenario, you have to calculate for that. So if you, let's say very simple, the farmers are cutting 100 hectares each year. If you come on with an alternative and they are going back from 100 hectares per year to 5 hectares, you save 95 hectares of mangrove forest. And those 95 you can sell as carbon credits. So it is possible. So if you have a very strict protection now, you say, now every year there's 100 hectares, or maybe even more, I hope not for you, gone. And you come in with a program where you stimulate the community not to cut down, you give them an alternative income, whatever, and you can prove, okay, now it has stopped, then you can achieve carbon credits for the protection of not cutting down 100 hectares each year. Is that clear? Yeah, it's a complicated issue, but I hope it's clear. So whatever you save, that part you can sell.
I hope that answered Vikum's question. Thank you. Another, a bit of a technical question in a different direction is we have Andres Hincapi is asking, what are the gaps in carbon credit schemes such as Plan Vivo or the Vera Gold Standard in terms of agroforestry activities? So what are the gaps in carbon credit schemes in agroforestry activities, and are there any studies that you could recommend on this topic?
Yeah, gaps, yeah. Yeah, we specifically chose Plan Vivo because they are very interested in agroforestry projects and also mainly community-based projects. So that talks a bit easier when you explain your project to them. The gold standard is mainly quite large scale usually. Costs, it was a very important one for us. So getting gold standard is very, very expensive. And as I said in the beginning, I don't want to spend money on bureaucracy. I want to keep that money just to do work with the community. And I know Plant Vivo is about 10% of the cost from a gold standard project. And gold standard also, if you have at least 1,000 hectares, gold standard gets interesting. If you are not that big, you shouldn't try it because of the high costs involved. And it's also hard to, in my personal opinion, it's a bit of a mafia as well. Because if you're not part of that WWF, Worldwide Life Fund group, and all the others, then it's hard to get gold standard.
Okay.
Well, that's my experience, but maybe, hope I'm wrong, but Plant Vivo is for me, it's quite okay. And VCS standard would also be an option, but that is also a large scale thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the honest answer. We have one more question, and then I'll wrap up the conversation with one of my own. We have a question coming from one of our other platforms. I don't have the name, but this person is asking, what could be the best way to deal with carbon cowboys? And maybe you want to speak to what carbon cowboys are.
Yeah, I think the carbon cowboys is like the people in Laos that come in and they say, they come up with stories and untrue stories. You want to be happy, you want to be rich, yes, give us your land and we plant trees. We can get carbon and you get paid for it. So I think those are the carbon cowboys. They are mainly looking at only carbon sequestration and not at the holistic thinking of not only carbon, but also community involvement, poverty reduction, biodiversity enhancement. So a combination of all of that. So yeah, what you should do, I just reject them if they. I've had some of them asking me that if they can invest in our project, but I just say no. And of course, they come in with a lot of money, but I don't want. Said I'm not about money; it's about development in my case. So if you have money and you say you should do this and this and this, then I don't fall for money. Yeah. So I think that's what I said. You have your vision and your mission in your, if it's an NGO or a social enterprise, and you have to define that well, and you have to be strict to yourself, and if it doesn't fit and you don't feel happy with it, get it out of your system. Don't let them in. I got an offer for €1 million, but I said no. I don't want to. It's either my way or no way, and then that was it.
You have to have a strong backbone.
Yeah, you see, sometimes you think, what can I do with it? But I would know that it would mean that I have to come up with targets that I cannot achieve, and unless I don't mind the community anymore, and I just hire people to plant trees and communities are on the sideline, and I don't want to do that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sticking to such a strong ethos. It will surely translate into the sustainability of your projects.
Yeah, now you see, now after all those years, now it's suddenly, you see people are coming with the right attitude and calling me and say, okay, you can join, but it's my luxury position at the moment. Yeah.
Well, that's great, and it sounds well earned.
Yeah.
Paul, I'll ask one more question, a bit big picture, and then we'll close out the conversation. But going forward, at the COP coming up, or just in general, what do you hope to see achieved for carbon markets in policy, in regulation? What are some of your visions of what's going to support this best to make it most sustainable and most profitable for communities on the ground?
Yeah, I mentioned it already before, getting a UN agency to coordinate all the carbon projects. I think that would be a problem. So they're discussing it, but I hope it's not going to happen. Because now with this Plan Vivo, with these voluntary market schemes, they are very well organized, very strict, but at least you can have your direct involvement into the community. So all the money that you get is used for the community, doesn't go to high-paid UN officials. So that would be something for me I will follow. So I hope it's not going to happen. What else? The carbon pricing, I think, would be good for me, but it should be linked to offsetting. And I know there's a lot of criticism about carbon offsetting, but if you do it in the right way, where you can also improve livelihoods, you can improve biodiversity. I mean, yesterday the Kunming Declaration on Biodiversity was signed. So if you combine those three, I think then you should have projects like that where you can do your offsetting. But I know the carbon pricing, they say, well, they just buy carbon credits and they continue what they're doing. What I think should be done in the COP is that they combine carbon pricing with the carbon measurement that each company has. I mean, I know they have it in Germany and all over Europe, in Holland and England, where companies have like a carbon footprint achievement each year where they are reducing. And I would say, well, if you are stuck in carbon pricing, so that's a negative one, so they have to pay tax again. They get nothing in return. Any company who is really serious about reducing their emissions by investing in solar panels and renewable energy, all kinds of issues, they should be allowed to also do offsetting, because you cannot force a company to. They also have to run their business and have to take care of their employees. I mean, I was also in the NGO sector complaining about the companies, but now I have one myself. Yeah. I can see that it's hard for companies to make the switch directly and just having to pay them taxes all the time. It doesn't motivate a company to really make the switch to cleaner production. So it's a combination of pricing, and they do their work already by reducing what they can do, they reduce. And if they cannot, money-wise, profit-wise, then help them with a bit of a cheaper option in offsetting, so that at least they can move forward, and then they can balance in the end. Every year they can maybe lower the offsetting, because every year they invest a bit in cleaner production themselves. But at least in 1 year they can reduce significantly with offsetting. And I think that would be a very interesting option, but I haven't heard anyone, or when I read the literature, they don't talk about that combination. It's either carbon pricing or stop offsetting, or combining it. So make companies feel that they are doing something, and help them also in a positive way, not just pay taxes. And then that's what I hear from all my clients. But why can't I invest the money then in your project, for instance, which would be much more elegant for us than just giving it to the government. And you don't know what they use it for. Anyway, that would be something it should be discussed, I think. And the price, of course, especially in the voluntary market, is too low, because the compliance market, so the official carbon market, between the governments, it's already almost 30 euro now per ton. And in the voluntary market, people only get 10 euro. We are still lucky because I negotiate for 15, between 15 and 20 euros, so you're willing to pay. But an average 10 euros, you can't do a project for that. So carbon pricing and helping, and then having a offsetting opportunity, maybe at 20 euro. The carbon pricing, the tax is 30, let them invest for 20 euro, which gives the projects the opportunity to invest. And the company is a bit cheaper. Anyway. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your advice and your thoughts, and hopefully everyone listening will take this into account as they go off into their own projects and their own work. It seems like we had an audience of some real practitioners today, so I think your comments have been very helpful and very thoughtful. And with that, thank you so much for joining, Paul. It's been such a rich discussion. We covered a lot of ground geographically and topically. And thank you to everyone who joined us and for submitting your great questions. And
sorry, no, one question when I was asking, I think the lady from Africa, to have a 20-minute, or maybe we can share email or something. She wanted,
Juliet, if you want to,
for a bit of advice to our project. Juliet, I think it is. Yeah.
Yes, she can share her email, she says.
Yeah.
Great.
That's fine if I can help.
Okay.
It's an email already. Okay, thank you, Juliet.
Wonderful. Happy some connections are being made. That's beautiful.
Right, you write down your, look very good in this online. Julie Tumeo.
At yahoo.com.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll get in touch with you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you again, Paul, for joining us and taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
We'll see you next time on GLF Live.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.